Hey friends, welcome back. Now let's dive a little bit deeper into scenario analysis. Now before I do that, of course, as always, I like to give the current page a proper name. Let's call this Time Intelligence Part 2. Okay, just for your reference, so you know what you actually can look these things up. Let me click on the plus symbol and let's now dive into scenario analysis. Now let's say you have a report and you have sales numbers, which you have, or your company has actually sold items to your customers. But now you're interested in what happens actually if we increase our prices, and what will happen with the demand. How will the demand change? Now, of course, Power BI can't give you here now exact details of what happens, but let's say you already have some idea of how to actually increase the prices and what this actually would mean for demand. Or if you decrease the prices, what this would mean for demand. So basically the scenarios you have already an idea. And what you want now is you want to show and give the report consumer, the end consumer, the option to see those scenarios in your visualizations. So how can you do that? Well, we will use the what if parameters. In a way, we already have used them for the ranking, but this time we simply implement them not for ranking, but instead for our sales calculation regarding the demand, so which is referring to the amount which will be sold, and also to the price. So let's do that. Let's actually create, at first go to modeling and create a first parameter. Click on new parameter here and call this parameter price change. Okay, price change. It should not be a whole number. This time we want to have a decimal number. The minimum is 0, and let's say the maximum is 1. 1 simply is referring because it's a percentage actually number in here later on, as decimal number, so it's 100%. So let's say we could say our scenarios cover 0% price change up to 100%. Or you can also use a negative one. Let's say, why not? Let's actually say 0.5 up to 100%. And let's actually use a minus in here if we would increase our prices 50%. Not what we actually want, but let's actually cover the scenario as well. And let's say the increment here is 0.05 and the default value should be 0. Okay, like that. Now if I click on OK, we'll see that now a new table gets added, which is price change, which is again the generate series function, which starts at minus 0.5 and ends at 1, and it's 0.05 increment. You can modify these numbers anytime. But this is now what we have in here for the slider, and there are the values which you can also enter here manually if you want. Or you can use a drop down here like that, and then choose from the drop down the specific value. It's up to you what you prefer. Okay, so let's say for the price change, I will go with the default value, which in this case is 0. Let's say the price is constant for now. And also maybe select this slider here or slicer and go in here and go to the value section, and let's increase the size. Let's make this bold and also make it from the size. Let's say we go with 14. Let's just see whether this is too big or that's fine. Go in here. Okay, these are the values in here, right? Okay. Of course, feel free to customize this further. Go in here and also the slicer header. Let's make the slicer header also bold, and we got our price changing here. Okay. So next we will do the same for the scenario, the demand for the scenario. So let's actually go to under modeling and say new parameter. And this time this is not the price change, but this is the demand change. Demand change. Because unfortunately in the real world we can't increase the prices up to 100% and then don't expect that the demand won't change. This only is applicable if we currently would sell something like graphic cards because of the shortage. So let's do that. Let's go under decimal number and go to minimum, let's say minus 0.5. And also for the maximum, I'd say maybe 0.5. Let's say this is the maximum for now. The increment here as well is 5%. So let's say 0.05. You can adjust those numbers to your personal preferences and of course settings of the company. Now for default, let's say again it's 0, and I also want to add a slicer to the page. So put this option here, click it, and another table gets created, which is called demand change here, which is again generate series. Okay. And also maybe we adjust this here as well. So let's say you also want to have a drop down here. And what I did was here for the formatting, I'd say that the values were bold and 14. The font, I left it as the default one. And then for the slicer header, I also made this bold. So let's go with bold here. And here we got our demand change. Okay. So let me drag this here up there as well. I'll make it maybe a little smaller here. And now maybe this one as well. Smaller here. And now we got our two options here to select the price and as well as the demand. So far so good. And now let's say we would like to see our total sales. So go with our measures table, choose the total sales. And as I said before, you could also use any other kind of measure if you want, but I think I like to stick with the total sales. And I want to see this maybe for a time period. So I go with my dates table in here and I select the date. And then maybe I display this, if I drill down further, onto maybe here a level like that, right? So here I can see all my quarters and I can see the values. And let's actually also go under the formatting option here and say I also want to see the data labels. Okay, so you can see here the values. Maybe increase this a little bit. So actually that I think that's fine. Position, auto, that's fine. Orientation. Let's go with the values here and maybe make this bold. And okay, that's fine. So we got our sales values here for each quarter year combination. And now if we change here something, for instance, if I say the demand changes 50%, so going here, 50% demand increase, so nothing happens, right? Because currently, of course, our total sales is not linked anyway to our parameters here. So let me first go to the default for now. Let's go with 0. And then let's actually modify or actually, create a new total sales measure. So instead of using the default one like that, we need to modify this a little bit. So let's right click here, create new measure, and let's call this total scenario sales. So total scenario sales. Of course, feel free to change the name if you want. So again, this is a SUMX function, SUMX, and our original sales function was the orders table, right? And in the orders table, we used the amount. And we simply multiplied this by the selling price, right? Selling price. This was the original formula we had, considering the total sales. But now we want to incorporate our two new parameters, meaning the amount itself changes by the demand change, right? So if we say, because our demand ranges from minus 50% to 50%, we need to simply multiply the first option here, the amount, times 1 plus the, in this case, demand change. There it is. And then we multiply the second one, so the selling price times, in this case, here 1 plus the price change. Price change. Here we go. This one. Okay, close this, and then I can also close the SUMX function. So let's just see. One of the parentheses is wrong or missing. Let's just see. SUMX, that should actually work. Let's evaluate that. Just see. Syntax incorrect. SUMX, orders table, times 1 plus decimal, times order selling price. Oh, I think there is a one parenthesis too much. Okay, here we go. So press enter, and let's evaluate that. And let's just see. Let's use the total scenario sales here as well in the visualization. Let's tick this option, total scenario sales, and we got exactly the same values, right? Which is expected, by the way, because we see that the price doesn't change and the demand also doesn't change. But now if we would say here, let's say our price changes, so we have marketing power and our price change, let's say 10%. I'll add this and you'll see that now the values change here. And we have higher sales than original expected, because here these are, let's say, the expectations for next year, and we say we can increase the prices 10%. And let's say it's best an optimal scenario. So let's say this is a great scenario. Let's say also we make it that the demand also changes. Let's say you got 20% more demand. Tick this option, and you see that now we are much better than the current year, right? Based on our scenario. But unfortunately, most often, then we will try to change the price, let's say 100%. So let's say price increase or almost. The top is not there, so obviously we need to type in 1.05. But let's say we increase it 95%. And this would be awesome, right? So much higher prices, so obviously much higher sales. But this also means that maybe, well, if we do this, then the demand will slow. And let's say the demand crashes 50% because we increase the prices so much. And this means that obviously now, as you can see here, in the scenario, we actually make less money than in the current year. Or actually so far we have. Because the comparison now is lower than the original one. And this is exactly how the scenario analysis can be done. Now, as I said, in this specific scenario analysis, it's an easy way. So there is no additional part from Power BI like it is somehow calculating any kind of scenarios. You have to actually, before, determine what is the scenario looking like. Then you can specify what are changes using parameters like price change, demand change, and so on. And based on your selection, let's actually to make this positive here again. Let's say scenario is up 10% and also the price, let's say something much more reasonable. Let's say price is up 20%, okay? Which looks good. But this allows you and your end consumer, and also if you present your report in front of board members or your colleagues or anyone, you can then actually play around with these parameter settings and see what actually this would mean for your specific company. So first determine what are the scenarios you want to cover, and then create the specific parameters, and then embed them in your report and give then the end consumer the option to slice and dice and choose the scenario which he or she thinks is the right one, and then he or she can then visualize that in any kind of visualization. It doesn't have to be a bar chart, but this was just one example. Okay? So hopefully that was helpful. As always, thanks a lot for watching, and I can't wait to see you in the next video. Until then, best guys.